Today, it is my honor to visit with Nolan Washington, and Nolan and I are friends of friends. We know a lot of the same people. He is an assistant coach at Kennedy High School, and Coach Cross and I go back a long ways. And several of the people I've talked with have actually recommended Nolan as somebody to talk to. So, though Nolan and I, we've crossed paths, we don't know each other really too well. So, but something unique about Nolan is not only is he an assistant coach at Kennedy, he went and he played college ball at Washington State University as a defensive back. And then, he grew up in the greater Seattle area. And but his career choice ended up being law enforcement. He works with the Washington State Patrol. And so that's going to bring some unique perspectives that I'm really looking forward to hearing right now. So without anything further, Nolan, if you would give me some background into your history, maybe even going back to parents and grandparents if you think that's important. And then how has race played a role in that?
Gotcha. Well, I just want to first off say thank you for having me. I've watched a few of these, and I've just been very excited and very happy to see these conversations taking place. Because like I said, I think before people didn't really think to have them, or they maybe were too afraid. So the fact that these are happening is just awesome. And like I said, I was honored when you reached out to me and said that you wanted to have this. So I just want to say thank you again. And for you, being a person of color, seeing, the fact that the first word on your board says, listen, you know what I mean? I think that's been the biggest thing in this whole deal. When as people of color, we just want people to listen at some point, you know what I mean? And then we can have that dialogue. It's been like, we've been trying to say stuff and people haven't been hearing. And the fact that that's what you're promoting. Like I said, I'm just happy that you've reached out to me. So I just want to say thank you to you for that. And I'm excited for today to kind of see wherever this goes. But yeah, so with me, I grew up in the Seattle area. My parents, my dad moved here. They're from Louisiana area. My mom's from Texas. My grandfather moved up here to work for Boeing when Boeing first got started out here. So that's kind of how my family got up here. But yeah, grew up in Seattle, in like the inner city Seattle part around Rainier Beach area. Grew up in Skyway was really where I was raised, kind of mainly where I lived. And went on to play at Kennedy High School with two of my best friends, my childhood friends. We were able to kind of go there and make great memories at Kennedy. Came second in state one year, and got recruited. Was by quite a few schools and chose the great Pullman America at Washington State. I love that place. It was great. It was perfect for me. The type of mentality I have, the family atmosphere. I still have friends and fans there from when I was there, and it's awesome. So yeah, went there, played there, played all 4 years there. Dealt with a lot of injuries, stuff that I've never dealt with before with football. So then I had to, realize towards my senior year that there's no way I want to go through these injuries and having the things that these athletes have to go through that a lot of people don't understand. It's tough and it's mentally draining. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall my senior year, and I was like, you know what, I'm giving all my senior year. I started, so I was like, I'm just going to finish on my senior year, just have fun, and then kind of put a cap on my football career. And so that's kind of what I did. And that's just kind of short background for the most part. Then we'll kind of there's some things that happened to me when I was young that we'll probably talk about that I'll kind of hit on, thinking about just little childhood stories as I was thinking about this interview. But yeah, so I did that. Then I had moved out to California. My girlfriend, now wife, she was living out there, and I was just out there just visiting. And then one of my college coaches actually got me a job out there, so I stayed. So I was out there for about 2.5 years. And then right around 2016, I was missing football. So I was like, I knew I wanted to coach. I didn't know if it was at the college level, high school level. And then there was a lot of stuff going on in the world still with, I think the biggest one for me was the Fidel Castile shooting that happened right around that time. And so Coach Cross had gotten the job at Kennedy, and me and him had talked. He had offered me, hey, if you're, willing to come back up here, you can have a, position on my staff. And he offered me the DC job. And so I was kind of like, okay. And then, then I started looking. I knew that my heart was being tugged. I graduated with a criminal justice major. So I've always known that, if I ever wanted to get law enforcement, I have that in my back pocket. My grandfather retired as a detective with Seattle PD for 30 years. My dad works for King County Corrections. So I was able to see law enforcement in like a somewhat positive light compared to like a lot of other my friends. But even then, with my encounters with law enforcement growing up, I didn't trust them. I didn't like them. I wasn't going to do it. That's kind of my, my thought process. But yeah, I just felt the tug being like I couldn't really work in corporate America or just a job where I was kind of making a check and, going back home, and I wanted to help people. That was my main thing. I love helping people, and I wanted to serve. That's one of the things God's blessed me with, is just I have a heart of, I get a high out of seeing other people get happy or, helping them out. And so I knew I wanted to do that. So I knew coaching, and I know I missed football. So I knew coaching was going to be there. And then after I seen that Fidel Castillo, I started realizing that I used to be very vocal in the sense of like conversations with my friends about things that were going on about race. And on social media, I would, post or, reshare things that I was really passionate about. Like, yeah, this is the problem. And then I started realizing, for me personally, I started saying, like, what am I really doing after this? For me personally, I'm not trying to see people who do posts or do things that, that's not doing anything. It is. It definitely is bringing light to situations. But just for me personally, I'm one of those people that want to put foot to action. So, like, if I'm just talking about it, or what am I going to do to kind of move it forward. And so I realized that the only way I could really at this point I feel was to try to change this thing from within, and was to join. And there was a time where law enforcement wasn't in the best light. The shootings had happened, and people were really hiring. It was down, so it wasn't really like, I didn't think it would be that hard to get in. And then with my background, I didn't really do much because I was an athlete, so I kind of stayed away from a lot, even though I was exposed to a lot growing up, being in the inner city. But my friends and I, we made a pact that we wouldn't, get caught up in a lot of stuff that our other friends were getting caught up in. And so it helped me out with the background process, and then I was able to get on. And I started in 2016, August of 2016, so I'm going on 4 years now. And so, yeah, so my biggest thing was I still wanted to coach, and the patrol was great. And I told them, like, hey, I'm a person in my community. I want to be coached. I'm going to be doing things. They're like, perfect. I work in Seattle. And they, and they've allowed me to still do my community stuff and coach. It's a lot of work during football season, I'll tell you that. But they're really good with fluctuating my schedule so that I'm able to make certain things and practices and different things like that. And so it's been great as far as that goes. But that was just kind of my mindset. And that was kind of why I joined, was I was like, what I want to try to, so a kid that looks like me growing up in, similar parts, I was only told, for the most part, being an athlete, being an entertainer was really the only thing that I could do that would kind of add value to myself or to my community. That this was a different path. And I realized that, a lot of people like me, they don't get to see that. Like, if I didn't have my dad and my grand, I probably wouldn't even have did it. So I was so fortunate to them that they didn't realize that every day, them putting on the uniform, them coming home with this stuff, me playing with their handcuffs, seeing their badges, that started getting me introduced to it, where it's like, oh, my dad did it, so I can do it. Compared to my friends, was like, even though they call my dad like Coach Dad, that's what they always called him. Like, they saw it, they're like, so they were able to see it, but they didn't have that. And then when you add in the encounters that we had when we were little with law enforcement, it was really like, I'm not doing it. And so that's kind of the history on why I wanted to join. And that's kind of just like a quick background. But yeah, what mainly was to kind of, so a kid that looks like me can go, oh, this is another avenue. I don't have to be an entertainer. I can go back and serve my community. I can go back and try to change the system from within and help weed out, cops that aren't in it for the right reasons, and call out those cops. And so that's kind of what brought me here today. And then, coaching as well. So hopefully I hit some points, but yeah.
Family history of a grandfather, 30 years in SPD. That's obviously a big impact, and dad in the correctional system as well. So I was going to ask, why did you get into law enforcement? You've already answered that. You did mention that when you were younger, you had some encounters with the police. I'd like to hear a little bit about that from your perspective, just as a kid and going through that. And then after that, I want to follow up with, as a police officer, when you approach a vehicle, what do you notice? Do you notice a difference between if it's people of color in the car or if it's white people in the car, how they respond to you, and do they seem nervous more? Or so if you can touch on both of those, your experience, not as a police officer encountering police, and then your experience as a police officer when you're engaging people.
Yeah, I got you. Those are great questions. I'm so glad you asked those. I wanted to hit on those points. But yeah, so the first my encounters, I remember growing up, this one sticks with me till this day. I kind of told it on some other interviews. I kind of hit on it. My friend Trey Watson, he was all-state running back, played at UW. He's now coaching at UNLV. He's a corner coach there. I was with him, his cousin, and his brother. We were driving through our old neighborhood and around the Rainier Beach area. And we were going through a neighborhood, and from what the police thought, he said that we were speeding. I don't remember my friend speeding at all, because it was so busy and there wasn't really enough leeway for him to speed. But whatever, if they said they got speed, okay, that's not the point, whatever. But it was just the way the encounter happened. So we got pulled over, and I remember there was like at least 5 cop cars, and I know my friend, and I'm like, I know he doesn't do drugs. 'Cause I'm with him every day. Like, we're like tied to the hip, and I know his car isn't stolen. I know this isn't the case. So there's nothing that, in my opinion, warranted 5 cars and a bunch of people coming from all different directions. Like, I was like, whoa. Like, I saw one, and then they were all at each window and like have their lights, so we couldn't even really see outside. And then so they were talking to him. There was one guy up there talking to him, and then there was guys in the back. And I just remember I was sitting there. I wasn't filling around doing nothing. I was just sitting there, had my seatbelt on, no reason to. And the guy on my side is like looking, and he's like trying to look in the car, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But he was kind of like, and my friend had a bunch of bottles because we worked out. He would just throw his like little bottles in the back seat or whatever. And I remember he kept saying like, "What are you trying to do? Hide drugs back there?" And like he literally kept saying it, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? Like, no, I don't do drugs, bro. What are you talking about? So like, and they were just like digging, like, and I was just kind of like, wow, you guys are really making, like, if this is just a speed stop, like, what do you just can't do what you gotta do and let us go. They asked for all our IDs, which at the time I didn't know that you don't have to provide, now that I know and the law, but they were like, everybody give your IDs. And I was kind of like, for what? I'm in the back, like, I'm a sheep, I haven't done nothing, but whatever. I just cooperated, gave him my ID. Trey's cousin and his brother gave the ID. So they ran us all, whatever. Then they pulled, I believe it was his cousin, out of the car. And then I guess he had a warrant in the past, but it was already taken care of. But they were able to, they pinned him on the back. They searched him the whole 9, like, and it was like, oh yeah, you're good, like, get away. And he had to grab his stuff and get back in the car. And then they didn't write us a ticket, but like, I just remember that feeling after, like, we were silent. We were so mad. And it just felt like it was the worst experience ever. And I was like, dude, all for a speeding ticket? Like, what? Like, I honestly felt like they were looking and they were hoping to find more and they were digging for more. And I'm like, I don't understand. I get maybe if, this may be an area that is a high drug area and you're trying to, but that still doesn't warrant a stop like that to go that route. I didn't feel like none of us gave you any reason for it to take it that far. But I just remember how mad we were. Like, it was quiet for like the rest of the record. We were just trying to process like what just happened and was that normal? And we were just thinking like that's just normal. You know what I mean? Like, growing up, we did, encounters like that. I guess that's how police interact with us. I knew from talking with my grandfather, it's like, that's not normal. They shouldn't, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be doing that. But like my friends was like, we were just kind of like, well, I guess this is just how it is. We just got to accept it. And then, I remember his friend who dealt with the system, and he was just like, it's another day. And I was like, that's messed up though. Like, they threw your stuff on the trunk, pretty much violated you. I was like, all right, bye. Like, we didn't find nothing now. Dang, you didn't get nothing. All right, let's go find the next person. It was kind of just like, it wasn't a good experience. I still remember the images like vividly of like, if I could make a movie, I would be able to tell you exactly what it looked like, exactly what the lights looked like, the smell, because it was staying in my mind about how that feeling went. And so that's probably the biggest one that I've always talked about. And I always remember that when I stop people. I always remember that when I stop people. I remember that feeling. I remember that how it made me felt. I always think of that. So when I see somebody nervous, I'm like, I know exactly why you're feeling. I know, no matter what color, but particularly people of color, that stains me in my head of making sure that if whatever encounter I have, that doesn't happen. Then I've had a few more other encounters where I've been with my friends who are white, and when I was over there in Pullman and we're driving and they get pulled over something, I'm in the back, seatbelt, sleeping, knocked out. I didn't do nothing wrong, but for some reason they wake me up to grab my ID. Like, hey, we need his ID. That happened at least 3 or 4 times. And I didn't know at the time, like I said, I thought that was standard procedure, but they were like, no, they're not supposed to do it. And I could have told them no. So it was just it was weird. And I used to be like, why are they asking for my ID when I'm not even a part? Like, they're up there, I'm sleeping. Like, I'm not doing anything. But it just seemed funny that always happened to me. And but just stuff like that. And then I've had little encounters here and there that, I'm pretty, if I really think hard, I can really remember. Those are the ones that kind of stick with me. That as far as that, like, I remember like it not being a good feeling and feeling like as a man, like, geez, like I just, like somebody just kind of like violated me in a sense, and seeing my friend being like, it seemed like a movie scene. You see a movie scene where you see those encounters with cops and black people, they throw them on the hood and they like press their elbow and you're like, oh, you thinking like, oh, that's Hollywood. It's like, no, that's real. Like, that's exactly how they did it. And it just wasn't a good feeling. But
real quick, I just something that stuck out to me is the fact that you remembered like everything about it, like what the smells were and everything. That's a key sign of trauma, right? So this is a traumatic event.
yeah.
So go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's why it's been ingrained in my head, like when I think about stops and stuff like that. And so, and then going to your second question, as far as now that I'm in law enforcement, and as far as I can really speak for highway patrol, I mean, because we do, I always like to break down, because people, when they assume, they think like highway patrol and then normal beat cops, or not beat cops, but like city cops are different. When they hear highway patrol, all you guys do is just write tickets and handle collisions. You guys really don't deal with all the hoopla. Yeah, I wish that were the case, because then it would be the easiest money I've ever made. I can go do that, go home, and then I can just stay clear of all the stuff. But unfortunately, especially when you work in a big city like Seattle, I've done DVs, I've done missing persons, fights, pedestrians, pursuits, stolen cars, gunshots. We do it all. I think the biggest way to separate it is our training is longer, and I'm not sure that makes us better cops. And I'm not saying everybody's training is different. The city has different protocols, but as far as when you're a trooper, you get taught everything and how to do thorough collision investigation and tickets and stuff like that. And we're taught to, like, you hear the saying of like, oh, you're a trooper, and like you hear that saying of like, that comes from, because we do everything in a sense. So like if there's a case or something, if I have a domestic violence case, say I have that, I'm the lead on that case. I do all the paperwork. I write all the search warrants. I don't like have a detective. I don't give that to a detective and now they handle it. You do everything. If I'm at a scene and this all happened, you do everything, and you see that case all the way through to, you go to court, you testify, you do it all. Or, normally sometimes with the city, and I have friends that are in the city and we talk about this all the time. They're like, bro, they have a case. So if they show up to a case and say it's something, then they hand that off to a detective, or they hand it off to somebody who's specialty in that field. Like if it's a collision, they're like, I don't handle collisions, I have to call a collision guy. Mm-hmm. For us, it's like, I show up to a scene, if it's a DV, I'm the DV guy, I'm the collision guy, I'm the whatever, and I handle it all. So that's kind of, the difference. So as far as when it pertains to stopping cars, for the most part, I can honestly say, I don't want to say it's hard to see the person you're stopping, but with like tinted windows and stuff like that, you normally don't know the color of the person you're stopping until you get up there. Mm-hmm. For my encounters. Now, some people could be different. They could be driving up next to cars looking to see what it is and then pulling up. I can't speak for everybody, but for most, usually mine is, if I'm on patrol and somebody does something, or that's like, I'm like, oh, that's wrong, or let me, stop them. That's normally how it goes for me, is I see the violation before I even see the color of the person. And I probably don't see the color of the person until I'm already up there and I'm like, oh, this is whoever. Which for me, it doesn't change the way that I encounter with people. As I'm walking up to the car, as I'm doing my normal jobs, I treat everybody the same, in the sense of I have things that I do as I'm, walking up to the car, just for my personal safety, that I'm saying to myself, that I'm not even really thinking about the person that this is. Try, like, I get up there, and then even then I'm not like, oh, this person's black, or oh, this person. I don't think about that. I'm more thinking of the trainings that we have. And me personally, like I said, I can't speak for all law enforcement. And I'm sure some people do go up there and they're like, oh, this is not a black person or not a white person. But for me personally, I'm thinking about, on this stop, this person's trying to kill me. Not because of like I'm going up there with my hand on my gun, but like for my training that we're taught, like I'm going up there thinking like, okay, make sure I'm taking these next steps. So if this person's trying to ambush me, I'm ready for it. Anyway, that is me. I'm not walking up there with my hand on my gun and like, oh, is you good? I'm just saying in my mind, I'm preparing for the worst. So then if it happens, I'm ready to respond to it. But I'm also preparing, I'm going up there just saying, let me see hands. Like, I want to see hands. Is there people in the car? How many people in the car? That's the stuff I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about, is this person black? Is this person gay? Is this person I don't even like those. Even wasn't in my head. Then when I get up there, it's like, oh, okay, this person's cool. I see hands. I don't, okay, cool. Now let me get into my normal. I position myself in. But like even then, as I say, I'm thinking about. I don't walk up there with my hand on my gun, or when I see the person, I'm like, oh God, let me see your hand. I'm not that paranoid. But it's just little trainings that you do to just make sure that if this person were to pull out a gun on this stop and kill me, I'm ready for it at any point in time. And then as I approach the car, like I said, my conversation is normally the same. My biggest thing on my stops, and I tell everybody this is, I hope that your encounter with this was positive, whether I write you a ticket or not. And I've gotten, compliments on, I've given somebody a ticket and they've called it in my head. I do, he gave me a ticket, but it was cool. I'm never out to get people. I didn't get into law enforcement to make a big drug crime bust and to stop a bunch of cars and write a bunch of tickets. And I didn't get in it for that. I got in it for the public servant aspect of it. The majority of my day is, hey, how can I help you? Hey, are you have a tire change? Do you want me to change it for you? I know I changed the tire. Hey, do you want me to call a tow for you? Hey, I'm gonna block the lane for you while you're sitting here waiting for your tow so you don't get hit. Like that's like majority of what I'm doing, more so than it is get your hands up, get on the ground, and give me this. At least for me. I always try to take some situation and use how can I'm not personally attached to anything. So I don't take things personal when people react or respond. I think the thing is like misconstrued is as law enforcement officers, a lot of law enforcement think that they're already demanded their respect because of the badge and the uniform. And that's wrong. And I think that's one of the issues. When you look at a lot of the bad encounters, especially with people of color, and you hear the way the officer's talking to the person, I'm just like, if any normal person, as a man or a woman, as an adult, if I'm talking to you that way, you probably wouldn't really cooperate. Mm-hmm. That doesn't change because you have a gun and a badge, especially with the history of law enforcement with people of color. Mm-hmm. They already don't respect you. And that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but what I'm saying is like you get in this job knowing what you're getting into. Mm-hmm. I'm not personally attached to it. When they say F the police, I don't take that personal. Like I don't take, because I'm a black man. I take that badge off. I chose to do this. So I knew what I signed up for. So there's no personal attachment. When the guy's yelling at me, telling me MF, I know they're not talking about Nolan, me personally, because they don't know me. You know what I'm saying? So I know they're talking about the badge and I feel them. I'm like, bro, I feel you. F them. I've had the bad encounter. But I hope this encounter between you and I was better. You know what I mean? I really hope that I educated you on this law that I had. And I hope that from this encounter that you can go, you know what, he gave me a ticket. I didn't like it. I don't agree with it, but he was cool. He respected me. And I think that's one of the biggest things.
You mentioned that when you come up to the car, you feel better. You see people's hands. I think so many of these bad encounters it may start out okay, but there's some point where tensions get high. Maybe it's because the police officer came up without a respectful attitude. Maybe it's the person, as they're about to be detained or arrested, then they fight back. What would your advice be to somebody that's dealing with a police officer?
And my advice would be obviously to just show hands. You know what I mean? That's what we're taught. You're taught. You can't see hands, you get killed because you don't know where those hands are, right? Like, and there's so many. You can watch so many videos. And in our training, we train. Especially at the State Patrol, like you're trained for the worst. And so we train on different ways to get shot out of a car. You know what I mean? Like in different angles that they can pull the gun out and where they can hide the gun. You go through practicals and that's so hands in your mind, just in law enforcement in general, well, you want to be able to see people's hands. And so there's a polite way to ask that. There's a respectful way to ask that. And then there's a way to educate on that. So that if somebody is of color, realizing he's just doing it because I'm black. No, listen, here, let me tell you why. And I think these points are always missed. And my sergeant, she's another great person to talk to because she understands. I got blessed with such a great sergeant. And her and I have really it worked together because, she's a female in a male-dominated profession and I'm a black person, a white male, and we've had, she's trying to pave the way for more females as I'm trying to pave the way for more people of color. And the conversations that we have just been so great on a lot of these issues. And we always look at videos, and she's a sergeant. She's been in there for like 20 years. So she's seen all types of things. And she's always like, dang, with that person, that stop could have been handled way different. The person would have just, didn't talk to them that way. And I think a lot of the encounters for cops is, like I said, they're so attached to that badge. They're so attached to what it is. Like it's their life. it is like, it's like who they are, which is under like, for some of them, this is the biggest thing that they've ever did, right? They maybe went to high school. They weren't the high school quarterback. They didn't get that type of clout or that type of feeling. They get that with the badge. When they put that thing on and they walk around and they get the looks and they get the people coming up to them, this is their biggest thing for them. You know what I mean? Being an athlete, which I think has helped me, it was like you experience all that when you're a successful athlete and you get the interviews and all that, you get used to it. So like you can put on a badge and you're like, I'm not doing this for that. But some people really are. Or some people are generational where they take this thing personally. I wake up, I was born to be a cop. You know what I mean? And my identity comes through Christ regardless of what I'm doing. So like I don't attach to anything, but I just think for a lot of people, they do handle that way. So I think a lot of those encounters where they turn bad is when that person is taking whatever that person's saying, whether it's they're not saying it, but they're not cooperating at the speed that they want them to, right? I'm telling you to put your hands and you're taking your time doing it. Do it now. Like, whoa, why does it have to be quick? Like, what are we in a hurry for? You're not getting paid by the hour. You're getting, you know what I mean? Like, why? If he wants to take his time, then you keep yourself in a good position and you got all day. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what a lot of those situations where it's like rush and people are like, oh, I got time to sit here and wait for this. I'm like, yes, you do. Like, I mean, that's what we do. We're trained. Let me talk. If I got to sit here and talk to you for an hour before we have to get physical, and I'm going to do that. Now, granted, I'm not afraid to take it there. And I've been trained and I do what I have to do to make sure if I have to take it there, I'm trained and I'm going to handle it accordingly. But at the same point, I rather grab the bees with the honey than, with vinegar and trying to like, if I don't have to go hands on, then I don't want to. If I can talk you into putting on these handcuffs, rather me throwing you on the hood and doing it, that's how I would rather handle that, But I think a lot of those situations where they get kind of a turn, I always look at the training of an officer because we're held to such a higher standard than it is the individual that we're stopping. It's so hard for people to think that, especially the Black community, with the way cops, when you look at the history of law enforcement, and I know this, like law enforcement started from slave patrol. So they used to go back and get the runaway slaves and bring them back. So you talk about that. You talk about Jim Crow. You talk about segregation, separate but equal. You talk about how cops used to go grab blacks, take them to lynch mobs to get hung. So you understand, Black people don't want to have anything that, when you really look at the deep-rooted trauma of it, you will start to understand, well, I get why they're saying that. And you start to have to, and then you think about just the encounters that we still have to this day. It is so huge that a Black person is not going to go try to mend that relationship after. No, why would I do that? It's easier for me, the cop, to go to them. It's my job, right? My job is, if somebody tells anybody, any race, whatever, comes to me and they say that they feel that their life is unsafe, my job as a public servant is to go, how can I change that? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to patrol more here? Do you want me to walk you across the street so you're safe? That's what I'm paid to do, a public servant. I'm not paid to go, well, my life matters too, or you know what I mean, or we'll deal with it. Like, no, I'm paid. I'm held to a higher standard when I put on that uniform. I can't.
So the motto, longtime motto for most police forces, is to protect and to serve, right? And I've watched the different cop shows, and the reality of what that is, I'm not full on that, but you see so many people that lie to the police when they get pulled over, have encounters. Maybe touch on how much seeing that day after day after day builds up a mistrust maybe on the police officer who they're dealing with, and maybe if that kind of hardens them to people. But then just the motto, protect and serve, obviously your service just keeps coming through in everything you're saying. Where have we fallen short, and how do we get back to that, and so people see police officers as there to help?
Your questions are all the things I already want to hit on. I'm glad that you're asking them. Your first question, as far as what was the first? I got so attached to the second part. Sorry,
people that lie to the police every day.
Yeah. So what I try to do is, and it's hard, like I said, to, like, when you get a stop and you kind of see where it's going, they all sound the same. You're like, okay, they're going to say this. Like, let's just say take a DUI stop, right? How much have you had to drink today? 2 beers. When it was really probably more, right? And like, you can kind of, it does go in line with that. And I think that's the hardest thing to do in law enforcement, especially when you're like on, like when I first came out, I was just on nights, and you add in fatigue, you add in life trial, you add in things that your patience in that window of, I guess, grace, if you will, is way shortened than what it was when you first initially came out. But even still to this day, where there will be times where I'm investigating, I'm giving this person the benefit of the doubt, even though in the back of my head, I'm like, typically this is how it's handled. And then it ends up going like the way where I was like, and I'll be like, dang, you really lied to me. You know what I mean? Like, cause I'm just thinking like, I fooled myself into thinking that you were actually telling the truth on this and you lied. What I would say, it just kind of goes back to why we're here, why you joined, which is instead of it to be to arrest that person or to stop that crime, you have to, it's very hard. It's easier said than done. Like I said, and this isn't, this takes a lot of, personal, mental wellness to get to this point of not treating every stop the same, or not looking at that person as that same exact stop, and trying to take into account that person, whoever that person is, as a different experience. But it is hard. And I think it's hard for, the public to see that, but it's warranted with the job that it comes. And unfortunately, with the way it is, when when you get in, this line of work, this is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, if you're not prepared for this, you shouldn't be in this field. You know what I mean? They say, like, when you're an athlete, right? When you're an athlete, that means that you have eyes on you off the field. I mean, so when you get into law enforcement, you're held to a different standard. As much as you're like, well, there's no way a normal human or a regular person will have they're not even chosen to be law enforcement. So you got to take that into consideration, and to try to, as much as you can, even though that stop may look the same, be the same, try as much as you can still, I guess, give them the benefit of the doubt. Or let's say they're lying to you, but I can still talk to you in a respectful manner. I can still handle this investigation, where you don't feel like I'm already knowing that you're lying to me, right? Like, there's ways you can say things that because there's people I know this person is probably impaired, drunk, right? That doesn't mean I'm gonna treat you any different for the rest of the stop, right? I'm still gonna give you you want to do this test? I'm still gonna explain it to you the same way I would do a person that's not. And I think it's sometimes hard. I think it's the impatient thing where you see, a lot of they just, for some reason, they just want to move fast. They want to get through this thing, and they want to put the dude in handcuffs. And I'm just like, sheesh. Like, if take a step back, like, yes, he definitely probably is over. Based off our training experience, that is a person that's over the legal limit, and you have a right to arrest them. All right, now how are we going to go about this? You know what I'm saying? How can we maybe use this experience to really be a good encounter for them? Like, you know what I mean? I think it's a great way. I always tell, I'm an FTO, and I always tell, like, the guys that have riding in my car that are, going to be troopers, is like, how can you make that experience? How can you tell them, you know what I mean? What's the least amount how can you look for a community like a community policing moment? You can do that in every part, even when you're arresting for, like, really? Yeah. Because now you're educating them. They didn't know about this process. They didn't understand that this process goes this way. They don't understand that you don't have to take them to jail, or that maybe you have to based off of what they have. And you show them, and you're being upfront with them, that they know exactly what the process is. A lot of the people that you see when they're getting in that, they didn't, because the officer didn't want to tell them why they put them in handcuffs. So the officer didn't want to tell them what the warrant said. The officer just wants to put them in handcuffs. The dude's like, why are you doing this? Why are you? And the dude's like, just listen to me. Put the handcuffs on. It's just like, why wouldn't you just stop and tell them? Why wouldn't you really break it down for him? Say, hey, listen, dude, you're 0.150. That's almost twice the legal limit. Do you realize that? Do you know what the legal limit is? Yeah, I know. Okay, but do you understand this is how arrest protocols work? As much as I want to put you in the back of my car without any handcuffs on, unfortunately, I can't do that for my safety, and I don't know you. And I'm not saying that you would try to kill me, but I just don't know you, right? I'm going to put I want this to work. I'm going to put these handcuffs on you. They won't be too tight. Let me know. But this is this protocol that we have to do. If you cooperate, man, this is going to work better, especially in the King County systems. The judges normally take cooperation, with the exception of, repeated offenses, into consideration. If they see that you cooperated well, I put that in all my reports. If you cooperated with me, that's highlighted in my reports that this dude was very cooperative from start to finish, because that makes them look like, okay, you just made a mistake, you learn from it, and how are you going to get better? And so I think that alone right there, that education piece normally gets missed because people are trying to rush and they don't want to do that. And I think that can kind of help out. And also, to get back to the main question of, like, assuming somebody's lying, we're taught, a lot of people don't know the law. We know it. We're supposed to know it. So you can't assume that this person who is drunk, he knows the exact laws. You have to use those encounters to try to educate as much as you can. And I think that will help with trying to give them the benefit of that, even though this person committed this crime, even though I'm still going to take those extra steps to do that, just so that it doesn't lead to something or doesn't look like, oh, well, on this stop you didn't do it, but on this stop you did. Why didn't you do it? No, I do it the same way every time. I may educate differently, I may say differently, but it's the same type of process. So I think that's kind of how we try to address that first initial question is patience, you know what I mean? Realizing education. How can I use this moment not as to be a police officer, but to be a public servant? Serving, even though I'm about to take this person, even though I'm about to enforce the law here, right?
Yeah.
How can I serve as I'm enforcing the law and make that encounter good for them?
So two words are coming through as I listen: patience and respect. You know, it doesn't have to be a fast process, and if you treat people with respect, you're probably more than likely going to get that in return, not just because of the uniform that you're wearing. So next thing I'd like to ask about is, we've got these nightly protests, some of which turn into riots, and we've got the Black Lives Matter group. There's the slogan, and then there's a group behind it, and part of the group behind it talks about defunding the police. Some have even said abolish the police. Where's the balance there? What are your thoughts on that?
First off, just Black Lives Matter in general. Like I said, I understand it. I agree with it. The fact that no matter what people want to say, perception is reality. And based off my experiences, based off of just history, and you just look at it, Black lives have not had value compared to other lives. And people, whether they want to fight and you want to argue with that and have that debate, then hey, we can, or you could just try to say, how do we change it? And so I just think that I agree with it. I am for the cause. I say it as a cop. I think it'll be a beautiful scene if all law enforcement literally would join forces with those people and they would say Black Lives Matter, and the movement that we can do to tear down this injustice, this not equal system, and how it would start that if us as police officers join forces with the Black community and those people that don't feel that their lives matter and agree and stand with them. The thing of on Twitter, all law enforcement put Black Lives, just how much that alone, that image would change. You know what I mean? But it's just, instead they put what? Blue Lives Matter. You know what I mean? And or they just don't say nothing at all, which is a whole different process. But as far as the movement goes, I agree with it. You get, my people, we've, shown, like I said, history shown when you've been oppressed for so long that what else are you supposed to say? What else are we supposed to do? As far as, the protests, I agree with them. When you look back into the Martin Luther King days and you look at civil rights, the images and what those things did, and how impactful they were, they do change, and it does help. And as far as, the rioting, as far as my experience, let's talk about Seattle. A lot of people are misinformed with thinking that it was the Black Lives Matter movement that caused a lot of those riots. Listen, I know people who were part of the peaceful protests for the Black Lives Matter. I know people that was running those because I work with them in the community, and they've asked me, hey, how do we go about this? How do we do it? And for the most part, the cause, everything was good. But there were people that weren't even Black. I saw white kids or white people that literally were the rioting, and they would, they would try to pretty much mess up the main message that was being held. And unfortunately, Black Lives Matter got, thrown in as this is the reason why, and people want to take and run with it. And so that's unfortunate. But we still just can't forget the message that, like, at the end of the day, there's still, as a law enforcement officer, I'm saying at the end of the day, there's still a group of people that feel like their lives don't matter, regardless of what's happening.
There's a phrase you said that has actually, for the last couple of weeks, been in my mind a lot. Perception is reality, right? And sometimes it can be difficult to prove that, well, this encounter happened because I'm a person of color or whatever. But there's this history that you talk about going back, generations. And so that's already in the mindset. And so even if an encounter had nothing to do with race, there's the history behind it. And so if the person that's experiencing it feels that that's what it is, there's a fear there, right? And so perception is reality, at least for that person. And we don't want to have people living in fear.
Yeah.
because of having these encounters, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it is. Like I've had stops where I've stopped a young black kid, and I ended up knowing the kid, but like just the process that I'm walking up to the car, it was nighttime, and he had turned on his dash light so I could see in the car, had a hand up, had his mom on the phone, and she literally was trying to talk him through what to do.
Mm.
And I've stopped white kids, don't even care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that doesn't even faze them. And that's when you talk about like privilege, when you talk about white privilege, I'm not saying that your life was easier. I'm not saying that you didn't go through trauma. I'm not even saying that you've had perfect encounters with the police. I'm not even saying that. But because of like, there's a privilege that you may not understand that you get that I see. I see those eyes of those black kids, because I was that black kid that when you put the nervous system, then I see when I pull over a different race, doesn't even faze them. Don't even care. Some are more disrespectful, and I'm just like, wow, like they haven't had to live that. You know what I mean? But I think it hurt more was my first year out, and I had a lot of encounters with my people, black people, grown men scared. I'm talking about nervous. I'm not even just talking about like this dude is really like, all he did was say he just was on his phone. It wasn't even like, and he doesn't have no criminal history. You would think, oh, maybe that's warrants his wife. Like, no, you run him, you're like, wow, this dude is literally just nervous. And it's a grown man. Like, oh man, sorry. And I remember one day, I'm glad it's you, bro. And I'm like, wow. Like, how many accounts have you, like, I'm glad it's you because I'm black. He knows that I understand. And the way I talk to him, he's like, okay, you get it. And it's just like, to me, that hurts, but that's their perception. You know what I mean? That's just how they feel. I still, to this day, like, if I drive by a cop, I'm always looking in my mirror like, oh, shoot, turn on. Is he coming to get me? Oh, shoot, let me make sure. Turn down my music. I'm just like, why am I doing that? Like, I'm a cop and I know but it's just like because of trauma or past and things are just like, that's just how it is, unfortunately. And that's what I'm hopefully changing, even though that hill alone is, that Mount Everest of a hill is alone just hard enough to try to get. But that's what I think about when I'm stopping my cars, when I'm on patrol. I always remember that. Even the feelings of the nervous white kid who had the bad encounters. So I don't go to a white person being like, oh, you shouldn't feel nervous because, I don't say that because their encounters could have been bad. You know what I mean? And so I take every single stop where I'm like, dude, how can I make this like this somewhat of a, it shouldn't be a bad experience, but unfortunately we got to a point where now it is.
Yeah. So I've got two more questions. I could probably go on and talk to you for a couple more hours, but two questions. The last one's going to be what's going to give you the greatest hope moving forward. Okay. And then before that, what type of maybe changes to law enforcement, maybe in training, or what do you think can happen in police reform to make things better?
I think honestly, and obviously, like I said, I don't have all the answers. So people who see this, I hope they're not thinking I'm sitting on my pedestal that I got them all, and I don't. I'm just a kid that literally I want to help change the world. I want to help serve people, and any way I can do that, I'm trying to do it. My whole vision is for people and helping people. It's not for me. And so when I say these things, I'm not, like I said, this is the end all be all. These are, things that I've just thought about. I just think that in general, I like I've kind of hit on this whole time is like the public servant part in law enforcement, I think has been lost. And my sergeant, I talk about this all the time in the sense of when you look at the hiring process, a lot of people who get hired are military, like they're shoo-ins, right? You go for the guys that are in the military who've already got this experience with weapon and tactical and just all that stuff. Or it's like the community service piece of a lot of hiring when law enforcement is kind of missed. It's not like emphasized is what I would say. Like they'll accept it. Even better, but it's not something that they're really emphasizing and putting a piece on, especially when it comes to in recruiting. And I think that when you got to understand, I think people need to separate military and police in the public servant, right? Military, I'm shooting to kill. I'm at war. Like everything is, I could be wrong in that term. I'm not saying that. I don't know what their motto is, but just from what I assume and talks I've had people in the military is, we're in war, we're shoot to kill. So you're in the mentality of I'm not trying to die. Public servant is to stop the threat. It's not shoot to kill. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and how do you stop the threat? And it's like the escalation is the number one response first. how do we talk this person from doing this thing? Like, how do we, it's not pull out your gun and make him put his hands up. That's not the case. How do I talk and how do I do that? So I think in general in recruiting, I think that's the biggest thing is that the model and it sucks because a lot of those people that are making that are the chiefs and that are in those positions are previous law or previous military or people that really aren't really invested in the community. Like a lot of cops aren't really invested in it, but there are many of them too. I know some of them, but like don't care. They want to, they work their hours, they go home. They don't even want to deal with, or handle, which is fine too. The job itself has its toll. But it's just in recruiting and making an emphasis on finding people that are invested in their community, that actually care. Because you get people that actually care about their community, the mindset is different. Like as a law enforcement agency, instead of having, we have rewards for how many tickets you handed out, let's have rewards for other things. How many community groups or how many positive encounters have you had? How many compliments have you had for the way you talk? You know what I mean? Just changing the emphasis of, how many drug arrests have you had? How many, granted, there's still crime. The thing that sucks about it is there still is people out there that do crime and that affect people, and that you need those officers out there who are stopping those crimes, who are making some of those stops. So I'm not saying that we abolish proactive policing, that people that, because they're unfortunately, as much people want to have no cops, the stuff that the people that we deal with, especially just in Seattle, if you're thinking that a social worker or somebody else is going to go be able to talk to that person out, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? With some of the people I've encountered, like they're, from what they're dealing with, the traumas that they're dealing with, the drugs that they're on, there's no way you're telling me that a person that's not trained in law enforcement with the things that we have to get this person to stop, that somebody else going to be able to, that's just not going to happen. But I do like the idea of reallocating funds and how we can make that work more for people and communities instead of spending money on lights on a gun, right? Or spending money on some equipment that like we really don't use. Maybe let's shed that money and put it towards maybe a community fund, or put it towards more de-escalation training, or more community panels where, we have nights where we go and invest, or in recruiting where, going out and seeking people in the community of different colors that will be great for law enforcement. I think that's kind of where we start. I think that's kind of at this point where I'm at, it's kind of hard to change a lot of the people that's been in law enforcement for 20 years and are stuck in their ways. And unfortunately, as much as I want this to change in 5 years, it's, it's really tough. I'm glad that all this stuff is happening. So it's forcing agencies to look back in and like, okay, how do we do this? But I just don't, with the way the system it is set up, that it's really hard to get a lot of those people that are older to understand this. But for my thing is, I'm always recruiting. I'm always looking for people, white, black, Asian, whoever, that'll be good people, but particularly my people who, especially ones who really have an issue with this. I'm like, bro, join. Like, listen, like your voice, you could stop those type of cops that are doing that thing. Now, when you're in my position, and like just bring up the George Floyd situation, I arrive on that scene. I am now in a power. I can push you off, and I'm not going to get arrested for that. Right? I'm not in a position now where I can stand and say, "This is, bro, what are you doing? I can stop this." Being on the outside, standing in this, you can't. Unfortunately, you can't do. If you jump in and push them off, that's going to be assault on you. You make it. You know what I'm saying? There's so much to go wrong. And so I think, my biggest thing is, I think to reform and just making sure that we change on the type of people that we're looking for, put more emphasis on people who are more invested in the community compared to just invested in fighting crime. But like I said, don't downgrade the crime, because like I said, there's still people out there that do it, and we do need people stopping those people that are going to go commit those crimes. But I just think right now, if you're looking at the bigger thing is, I think we emphasize people that are really, wanting to be in their community, investing in their community, actually serving their community, and having those a part of the hiring process, or at least through the hiring process, and also through their training, through the academy training, where they're getting the point of, oh, I'm a public servant. I'm not just, as much as gun training as we do, and sitting down in tactical situations, community training, where they see people from the community more. And for a week of where you got all types of people from different communities just coming in, and you're just like, wow, I didn't realize what I was signing. I think when people really realize what they're signing up for, that like majority of your job is, hey, how can I help you? That's majority of my job compared to it is, pulling the gun out. And granted, I've had fair share of, I pull my gun, and I have stories all day about, the things that I've, seen just in Seattle alone. But I think the emphasis on that could kind of change the mentality of a guy who's getting in law enforcement, realizing that I'm not just here to be a cop. You're not.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're a public servant, and you're viewed as that. And in the way that the sooner you can realize that you're more of a service person, the easier your job's going to be in the sense of your mental health, your wellness, the trauma that you face. You won't take things personal. You won't sit up there and be attached to that because you realize, oh, dude, there's a community out there hurting, and I'm a part of the problem by not acknowledging that. And
Yeah.
you know, and
So back to that motto, the protect and serve, they're equally as important, right? So last comment, what gives you the greatest hope moving forward? And then if you have any other comments that you wanted to touch on that you didn't get a chance to, you can close with that and I'll give you the last word.
Okay. Yeah, well, my hope, you know, and I'm not, you know, I can't get on here and not talk about, you know, my hope in, first of all, who it lies in, and that's in God. I wouldn't be, I mean, my whole testimony, the story in general, I wouldn't be where I am today if, like, I would not be sitting here with the things that I've seen growing up. And I'm not saying I went through the worst of the worst, and everybody has their stories and things, but just when I look at my life and strategically, I have friends that have been killed or in gangs or in the system and just different things like that. And I was right on that line panel for God to go, nope, I'm going to use you to do this. So that's where my hope is, that God, I didn't join law enforcement just, you know, because not only just because I want to be, it was more so it was a calling. It was God saying, this is what you're going to do. And I think when people just in general in life, when you start realizing in life that this life isn't about you, you can spend majority people they live until they're 50 years old trying to figure out what I want to do, I want to do this. And they're never happy, no matter how much money they make, no matter what titles they get, because they're doing it all for them. But once you realize that you accept that God says, hey, this is your plan, this is what I have for you to do, and you accept that wholeheartedly full, then a lot of things that a lot of people go through, it doesn't get to you. And I think, you know, where my hope comes from is in God, that God gave me this, and that I have a bigger power within me and behind me that I don't even know, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that I can't really grasp, because the power of him is so great. And that I think that he's bigger than all, right? Like, you can go through all this and the stuff I've seen from, you know, the deaths and the situations I've had, you know, seeing kids that just crazy things that I can see, that I can know that still that there's hope in God, and knowing that he still has a plan through all this. He's bigger than all of this. And he's, you know, going to take a lot of these bad and make it better. And so, and that's one thing growing up in the church, especially being from the Black community, think about the slaves, those Negro spiritual, you know what I'm saying? You think about how, like, gospel music got them through, you know, those days of being a slave. And that's just enriching my family. And you know, one of the things that my parents did for me. And so that's where my hope lies. And I do have hope in that my hope lies in that God is bigger, and that God put me in this position in particular to be in rooms with people and to have these conversations, and that hopefully that through me, he's speaking to somebody else to go do something else somewhere else. And that's kind of what I'm, you know, is placing my hope in. Is like, all right, God, I know you didn't bring me here just for me to, you know, do 25 years and get out of here. You know what I mean? I know you just didn't bring me here just to stop some cars, or, you know, or just to promote whatever it is, and you not do nothing in the midst of all this. Nah, I'm not believing that. I've seen my life, and I see the way it works, and I've seen you work plenty of times and again, that I know that your bigger picture and your plan is real greater than my understanding, my mind around. And so that's kind of, I know that wasn't probably the professional in the sense of answer that you're looking for as far as a law enforcement answer, because
I'm looking for your answer. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and so I guess that's kind of where my hope lies in when it comes to this, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take people with a servant heart, people with a loving heart, people with grace to understand on all sides, on both sides. You know, for people of color, person of color, to realize how a white person may feel when they see you, and you know, not because it's, you know, to take yourself out of, to put yourself in other people's shoes. That's hard to do, especially when you're hurting, especially when you're the one that's been oppressed, right? For me to go, you know, I've been oppressed, but let me put myself in that person's shoes, whether they're white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. Mm-hmm. How can I put myself and see their issues and try to make amends, try to help them? I think that's the only type of heart that can come from God. You know what I mean? When you think, you know, and so that's kind of where my hope lies in, and that's what I'm hoping happens. through all this that I know will happen. Whether it, the actual effects of it will happen in my lifetime or, now or 20 years from now, who knows? Because, I don't control that. But that's what I'm hoping that, kind of comes from all this.
Awesome. Awesome. Any last comments?
I think, we really hit it all. I mean, I guess I don't want to leave this interview with somebody who I pray who does watch this realize that, if you're interested, if people are trying to, look for jobs and even coaches, you know what I mean? I know particularly our agency's huge on helping coaches try to do both. It is tough though. Like I said, football season I'm working a lot, you know what I mean? And I have a great wife who is a soldier, and she's able to hold down the fort while I do everything and support and just the whole nine. But I want to recruit great people who want to be public servants, who want to help change the system. And you don't just have to be black. Even if you are a white person to come and we need each other, and we need you just as much as you may think. Even though we say Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that your life does not matter. We're not saying that. We need you to understand that. Just come with us. Let's link arms, and let's figure out a way to attack this unfair system from within. And I think when you get law enforcement, like I said earlier, when you get law enforcement officers shouting Black Lives Matter, shouting these things of the people, then the system goes, okay, wait, if the people that are working for us are saying this is wrong, we need to take a look at this.
Yeah.
I think that's how you slowly start to turn around, you know what I mean, these things and kind of make it better for our kids. Or I have a daughter, 2 months now, and I want her to be able to go through and have a fair, have a fair shake just like anybody else. And so, my last words would be, if please join, reach out to me. I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty sure you'll put some more information on there if you need help. And please join. I need help. We need help. I mean, we have some people in there right now, but not enough. We need more. And since this is even bigger, I'm coming after everybody now. Or since I'm like, come join. What are you doing? Are you happy? Are you not? Hey, listen, let's go do this. It is hard, but it's worth it. And so that's kind of my last deal, is that I pray that whoever does watch this, that they will want to join and help in, changing this and making it fair for everybody. So.
Great. Hey, Nolan, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. I wish you nothing but the best and blessings, and congrats on being a father.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. And again, thank you for doing this. You may not understand the impact of these right now, but whether you get 20 views or 20,000, it doesn't matter. But just these conversations, I keep looking at the listen on your board, and that's the first thing. And you're starting off. That is numeral one to, the start of these conversations, is that I see listen. I'm like, God, this actually wants to this white male who I don't know personally. I've heard good things about. I don't know personally. Literally sitting here and engaging and wants to know about my story and wants to, kind of understand, educate himself, so now he can maybe go educate his white friends or something like that. And so I think that's dope of you. I appreciate you for doing that. I appreciate it as a black man. I appreciate it as a coach. As we deal with our players, as that that you're doing this, and it's huge. It's huge, and I appreciate you for it.
It's my honor.